Hi everyone, welcome. Down here in my wormery, and this bin is one that you probably recognize just from the little diagram that's printed out over here. For a while I would try to create this diagram by hand, and it started to become a bit much, so I started putting it into the spreadsheet, printing it out regularly, and we've not kept it up. But basically what we ended up doing during the most recent couple feedings, and if we feed today, and I think we will, we're actually going to be up to feeding number 19 now in this 185-day-old worm bin. And as you could tell from the orientation of the most recent feedings have been getting placed right down the middle now. And we've occasionally popped back in to see, for example, how the pumpkin stem is holding out. And I think we even came over to this corner to check out, I don't know, I think we saw a few banana stems or something like that, but there wasn't a whole lot of leftovers anymore. So the intervals too kind of broke. You know, we did come back here. That first chow feeding down the middle was on the 11th, that 17th feeding, but then the 18th feeding we were just unable to keep to that 10-day interval. I believe it was something like the 24th when we returned. Sloppy. It was the 24th, so at that one particular time there was a 13-day interval. But now again, it just so happens that I think we're back to a 10-day interval, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know, whatever the arrangement was here, whatever the dates were, I believe that we're now back to a 10-day interval since the last feeding. There was just this one break to that pattern, and we're going to get this system fed very similar to the way it had been fed previously, where we just fed with chow, except since the first two feedings and now the third feeding of chow, worm chow that is, I have changed my recipe a little bit. The original recipe was all seeds and grains, and this most recent one includes some cashew nuts too. So it's right here, this little mix. So I'm going to set these top covering papers aside. Give ourselves a little room to work. I got to put a glove on too. And we can see how things in here are coming along. So a little something I've been trying in my systems is the application of the mosquito dunks liquid. It's otherwise known chemically as BTI. It's a type of bacteria. It's supposed to help control gnats and things like that. In the past, I used to just scoop some out of the bucket that I keep the stuff in and then, you know, kind of sprinkle it around. But I've kind of stepped up the game a little bit. I put some of it into this applicator bottle here. And I'm also changing the manner in which I'm applying it. I think I like the idea. Someone in the comments section of one of my videos said how it seemed kind of like a shame putting this stuff in at the end when you've got a much better chance in the beginning of actually applying the stuff directly to the target. Because all those little flying insects that are putting their eggs in here, it's a big shame, I guess, to mix all those eggs in everywhere and then only hit it in certain places with the BTI. Here, we know that they're probably all pretty much on the surface within a certain depth, and that spraying the entire top surface with the BTI at the very beginning makes it such that it doesn't matter if you go ahead and start blending all that, you know, stuff in, because at this point it's already been treated with the stuff that's supposed to knock it out, basically. So I really like that idea, and I'm anxious to eventually make the rounds all the way around into all my systems and start applying it in this seemingly much more effective manner. So I don't know, I'm curious if other people will apply it this way. I've seen other people use this stuff, but they just apply it, sort of just get it in there any old way like I was doing. But I'm really liking this idea, and I'm also anxious to start seeing some results, and maybe that's the reason I'm going to the extra effort of doing it this way. So let's see what happens. Alright, so just like last time, the only aim was to sort of collect up any sort of residual bedding bits that we can find. I guess there's a whole bunch of it scattered across the top here. I think we can kind of rake that together pretty easily, really quick in the beginning. To try to draw some worm activity to it. That's where I'm coming in with the worm chow, to just sprinkle all this residual leftover paper beddings, you know, shredded paper, shredded cardboard type stuff. Apply the worm chow straight to that stuff to try to promote consumption of the leftover bits. I think it should only be on the surface, because that was kind of what I was doing towards the end. I was starting to feel like I needed to do a little bit of supplementation of the bedding in the system. It seemed like it may have been running a little bit low in places. So the way I decided to do that was just simply create little cushions, little pockets here on the top, like a little pillow of the bedding that I was adding. So it shouldn't be too deep. It shouldn't be mixed down into the material. It should pretty much be out here on the surface, so I could pretty much gather it up from time to time and then try to focus some worm attention to it using my worm chow. So, but you know what, before we do that, before we put the worm chow on, let's take a little poke around here. You know, we did notice during the last check-in how things were wet, and it was at that time that we switched over to the cardboard coverings, doing away with the plastic coverings. And my hope was that the system would start evaporating some of its moisture because of that cardboard covering being on here instead of the plastic. But I don't think we're really seeing a whole lot of drying off happening. I don't think that cardboard really allows for a lot of moisture to permeate through it. But it's also not that important that things dry off rapidly. I just felt like maybe we can start into a sort of a slow, gradual drying pattern. And that's what I'm after here. So I wasn't looking for, you know, some sort of a wicked change to what's going on in this corner in only 10 days. Or in this corner, I mean, in general, I wasn't really expecting to see the entire moisture solution in this system become perfect, or not solution, situation, I guess, right? The moisture content, and this is still kind of high. Although, you know, I don't know why I've been getting that feeling like I touch this stuff and it feels damp. But as soon as you start just observing it, looking at it, handling it, it crumbles. It's really nice looking and everything like that. It almost seems like the first impression is, hey, this stuff's really damp, but once it starts moving and it starts showing how easily it crumbles, and you can see how much the worms are enjoying it, and it doesn't, you know, seem muddy or gross or, you know, clumping together the way really muddy stuff sometimes does. And that's when I really start thinking, you know, maybe there is nothing wrong with this from a moisture perspective. It was just that initial touch when you first touched it, you know, it was like, ooh, so damp, you know, and then you feel like, oh, we got to do something about that. But maybe my knee-jerk reaction to sensing that when I first started probing into here was sort of an error previously and now too, and maybe now I'm just starting to see the error in my ways. So yeah, I mean, I did find one banana stem over in this banana corner. I think that's the banana corner. I think we looked in the avocado corner. I think we looked in this corner where there may have been broccoli put a month ago, which you would definitely not expect to see any leftovers of. The only other thing there might be some leftovers of, or maybe sometimes over in this corner, we'll see the one really large remnant that was left behind when we fed pumpkin a long time ago was the stem of the pumpkin. And that's just something that I think might even outlast the life of this bin here. It might just go with the worms into their new home when the time comes to relocate them. But we've been kind of sticking to keeping it in its place where we had put it originally on day one, which was right here. That's how I knew exactly where to grab for it. And you can see the worms are not shy about mobbing all over this pumpkin stem. They're climbing down into it. It's softening up. I prefer not to try to help along with the breakdown process of certain things, and this is one of them. I just rather see what the worms do with it over time, and I guess the time is what makes this interesting, you know, is to actually over time observe its breakdown. And I mean, it is a big piece. It's definitely a large stem. So to expect this thing to break down in the lifespan of a single system seems a little bit unrealistic. If this chunk of it just fell off, or was it one of the pieces I chipped off once long ago, and I always tried to keep it nearby so that we can see the overall mass of it by replacing it where it got chipped off from. So yeah, down here I seriously doubt we would see any other leftovers of anything else, but I've been proven wrong often after making such statements in the past, so I wouldn't be surprised if we bumped into something. Lots of worms pretty much everywhere in this bin, basically, you know. Every corner of the bin seems to have little bits of food remaining in it that the worms are just hanging out and enjoying. You could see the worms everywhere around here, even though it's been a long time since there was food last placed into that corner. It just really makes me curious to see how this last corner over here looks too. This is where we put avocado, and even though the avocado itself was probably eaten up out of the shells, it always seemed to me like the avocado shells themselves were something that the worms really liked too. So I think at this point the main leftover in this corner is probably just going to be these avocado shells all over the place. And it seems to be enough to keep the interest of the worms because they're all over the place. They're all over in that corner, aren't they? They sure are. Well, we've definitely given this whole system a good fluff up, and I think we've also kind of walked me off the panic kind of mode of thinking that the system was too damp, could go anaerobic, is going to have problems because of it. I think we're actually in very good shape here with this system. And since that cardboard covering doesn't seem to be allowing for too much moisture loss, I think we'll just stick with it. I don't want to go back to plastic coverings if there's really no specific need to, and here there's definitely no need to. And maybe we'll just sort of, continue to benefit a little bit from having a somewhat more porous material than plastic covering the top for us. Maybe it will result in a slight bit of drying in here, but it also seems to me like drying is not really that necessary. Perhaps the only benefit drying would serve for us is to maybe at some point when we want to try to migrate the worms out of here, try to lure them into a particular section of the bin that we make sure is very comfortable and cozy for them. At the same time, it sometimes doesn't hurt for the rest of the material in the bin to already start getting on the slightly dry side, which is also going to sort of trigger that response in the worms to try to find something a little more comfortable. I'm just restoring this stem back to where we had originally placed it in the very beginning. We didn't really look at the material right below where the stem had been because I see lots of worms down there too. This is such a cool bin. It's really just got worms pretty much everywhere and in great numbers. So it's always fun to check this system. So I'm at my little neat pile of stuff in the middle. It was all organized in the beginning, and then we went exploring, and now we've got a lot of blended in bedding everywhere. I was really kind of hoping to have a pile of it in the middle that we can try to draw some worm traffic to with our feeding today of more worm chow. But, I didn't really see the kind of turnout or response that I expected here when we first opened the system up. I kind of expected that last application of worm chow down the middle would leave sort of a patch of fresh castings, like showing evidence of a lot of worm traffic, a lot of worms coming up to nibble on that stuff and whatever, but it just seems like there's just gorgeous castings everywhere, so it doesn't really stand out when they pile up in any one particular place. What a nice bin. Alright, but I'm kind of fawning over it at this point because it is very nice. But we've got to come to an end at some point, don't we? So let's try to make that happen now. Let's get this application of food in here. It also seemed to me like that application of food that we sprinkled in here last time just didn't seem like a whole lot, I think I had sprinkled this stuff on twice. I had put on one layer and then I mixed things in a little bit. I sprinkled on another layer, but I think I just right here on the first sprinkling might have put down quite as, I don't know, possibly as much as we had put down in both sprinklings last time. I felt like I was going really light and really easy, and it seems like we could certainly give these little guys much more than that. There's certainly enough mouths to feed in here to handle it. And I guess the other thing is, as long as it is going to be, luring worms over to the leftover scraps of bedding, let there be enough of it to make sure that the worms keep coming up to hang out and eat all that bedding we want them to consume. We don't want to have that stuff floating around in our castings. We want to have some nice clean castings free of all that kind of debris. So I guess we'll just keep working on it. We'll keep, working this material until it's all castings, but in the meantime, we'll have to feed them too, and we'll try to combine both of those together to create a little bit of symbiosis. All right, well, we've got the cardboard covering and not much else, right? We don't have a feeding zone indicator because at this point it's kind of understood where the feeding is. Oh, this is interesting too. It's kind of resting up over the the bedding now. We're allowing for a lot more airflow underneath it. And maybe that's just what the doctor ordered. Why don't we try it that way? Maybe we'll start to see a little bit of drying of the material, which I think will do the whole system good. It's not going to hurt as far as I'm concerned. And we'll even keep our little notes here. I was thinking about using this stuff right here, this piece of paper, as just extra bedding, maybe throwing worm chow on it, but for now it's kind of nice to have it here instead of just reprinting it each time. Maybe we can just refer to this and use it as reference. But we're really not looking in on the status of, X days old anything anymore, you know. We've got only tiny scraps of stuff left anymore, except for that pumpkin stem. All right, well, I got a little bit of cleaning up to take care of over here and putting things away. But I'm not going to take your time with that. That's boring. Before I go, let me really quickly say thank you. Thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you enjoyed the video. If you did, as always, please don't forget to leave me a quick thumbs up before you go. There's also channel memberships. If you want to join, become a supporting member, that's always very much appreciated too. All right, everyone, have a great day. Thanks so much for watching. Bye now.